So call me during this. Okay, guys, it's 11:03. I know Jake is going to be joining us pretty soon. We still got other people coming in, but we don't want to take up all your Saturday mornings. So I think we are just going to go ahead and get started.
Great.
Good morning. My name is Phyllis Traylor, and I am part of Notary Gals. I am one half of Notary Gals. Michelle is the other half. We just decided that we were going to do Saturday training for notaries because we don't have enough stuff to do, right, Michelle? No. But anyway, we are so happy to bring this training for wills and so thankful that we have Brenda Stone here with us, and Jake is supposed to be coming in pretty soon. Okay, again, my name is Phyllis Traylor. I'm the owner of Texas Notary Public Training Academy and the Texas Notary Patron Learning Community. And I am going to turn it over to Michelle so she can introduce herself. And then Michelle, can you introduce Brenda after you finish so she can introduce herself?
Hello, everyone. Again, my name's Michelle Riley. I've met some of you, and over the last few months, I've been able to meet many of you here at Notary Gals or on Clubhouse. I'm the owner of Notaries for Alabama, which is a networking group here in Alabama for notaries. So I like to say I do in Alabama kind of what Phyllis does in Texas. And I'm really glad to be here. And so far I see one of my Hangout Alabama members. Hey, Gina. Hopefully we have a few more. I will now ask a dear friend of mine and Phyllis's, Brenda Stone, to introduce herself.
There's always going to be a pause while Grandma finds the technology controls and turns them on or off. So I'm Brenda Stone, and I began as a notary signing agent in 2004. I have a directory for notary signing agents or mobile notaries, Texas Notary Professionals, and it's a freebie. I think Romika has, she's been in my directory for a long time. I see Wanda Hughes here, who I just met, or I did see her. She may have just dropped off, but I've just met her through, and I'm not sure what state she's in, but I'm all over the map here. I got up late, so that's why I was running a little behind, and I'm still not myself yet. But there's Wanda Hughes. Okay, I just met her in the online notary world. So anyhow, I have a little training on for Texas, naturally, for notaries who are doing wills, and sort of walks it through how I do them. But that's really all that I've got to tell you. I have a partner that helps me teach. Well, we help each other teach. We're partners, Jake Burkholter, and I'm not seeing him just yet, but I'm going to call him in just a minute and find out if something came up. I think he runs a DFW notary signing service, so sometimes he is busy on the weekends. But anyway, that's enough about me. Let's talk about y'all.
Thank you, Brenda. We are so happy to have you here. I tell you, Brenda was a little bit modest in introducing herself. She is Miss Notary Texas. When I first started out, I was looking for training for Texas. This is before all the six-figure trainers came on board, and Brenda just has a slew of Texas notary information online. I mean, I'm still waiting on her to write her book because she got enough content to write a book, you know. So I mean, but she is a wealth of information, and you'll see in the patron community, you know, you'll see a lot of times I'll refer to articles that Brenda has written. So we're very fortunate to have her with us here this morning. Okay, so today we are going to talk about wills. We're going to give you just some tips about what we do with wills. If you have any questions as we're going through this, please feel free to ask. You know, this information we're sharing for you because you guys are going to be the ones out there, you know, working with with your clients on getting these wills notarized. So we just want to make sure that you guys know what some of the best practices are. So I am going to ask Michelle if she would share with us first, um, you know, a tip that she practices when she's doing wills.
Thank you so much. And before I get started, I do want to recognize Robert Owens, who joined us. He is another VIP in the world of notary, especially in the state of Texas. So the Brenda, Phyllis, myself, and Jake, we held this discussion several weeks ago, wills, on Clubhouse. And we were pleasantly surprised at the interest, the response, the questions. And so we thought it would be a good idea to have that discussion here on Notary Gals as well. Now, some of you are specializing in signing agent work only. And so you may not run into situations where you're being asked to notarize a last will and testament. But those of you who are performing mobile notary work or general notary, you can bet your bottom dollar that if you haven't been asked to notarize one of these documents in the past, it's going to happen. So best practices or things we feel that you should know is your role as a notary, believe it or not, starts before the appointment. So many times we think, okay, once I get there, then I need to do my job. But I recommend you to do a lot of prep work on the phone when you are scheduling this appointment. And I feel that it will make that notarization appointment a lot easier. So one, be aware that this type of notarization is probably going to be a little longer than some other documents. Why? If it's a will that requires witnesses, and most of the ones, really all of the ones that I've done in the state of Alabama require witnesses have. And so we're looking at 3 people. So addressing with the caller, the signer on the phone while booking the appointment, it's important for you to go ahead and inquire about whether or not witnesses will be attending or are necessary, and if the signer has already lined that up. So one of their witnesses, 2, you need, in scheduling this appointment, allow more time because there are going to be multiple signers and the documents can be pretty lengthy with initialing and multiple signatures. I'm going to pause there for now. Thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you, Michelle. That was great, great, great. Especially, you know, reminding people to that the process actually starts before you even get to the appointment. That is really really important. I see Jake joined us, and I just wanted to see if we could get him to introduce himself right quick. Jake, you there? Uh,
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
yes, sir. We can hear you. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I'm Jake Burkholter in Texas. Been a commissioned notary for a little over 20 years, and I have a title company background. And anything about wills and work with layman public carries over to what I do, because when they're not done right, we used to have to do curative and sometimes undo what the notary did not do right. So Thanks for having me, and this is a very important topic, and I'm here to learn as well.
Thank you, Jake. Okay, Brenda, you want to share one of your tips with us on wills?
Yes, I'll be glad to. All right. My first tip is and this is often the wet blanket that I throw on everyone, but I really try to make sure that any wills that I handle are created by an attorney before I go to notarize them. And if you want me to go into why, I can talk about that a little bit too, if you don't. Okay. And that is because Romika was one of the first people that joined my Texas Notary group. And so she probably saw this too. And if there are other people besides Robert and a couple others that I haven't mentioned, I appreciate any of you that are here today that are in my group. I didn't promote it there, but I should promote this there, but I should have. Anyhow, back to what I was saying. The new notaries are very confused by wills, and a lot of times they would be getting them when I knew that they had been poorly drafted just from experience and work experience and stuff. And so then they would want to know, okay, well, what should I do? And I began to realize that if I told them what to do and then they told the signers what to do, that was just going to be me trying to be a lawyer, and that was wrong. So I said, okay, by example, I'm not going to handle wills anymore that are not done by lawyers, because there's too many places that create problems for new notaries especially. And so there's a couple of very specific things that notaries need to do when they're handling them for the state of Texas. Now, Alabama's may be different, California's may be different, but I knew enough to know that. So that is my tip. And I'm sorry I rambled on, but there it is I don't do wills unless they've been drafted by an attorney, because then I know I'm not going to get in trouble for something that is done, or said or whatever. So, and when I say in trouble, I'm not saying that I'm going to get in trouble for the content or the lack of content. I don't want to be called into a courthouse setting and asked to testify one day when I want to go to, Cancun, I want to be on vacation, but yet I've been the notary on this will that was improperly drafted a long time ago, and I get called in to court to testify. So that's my thinking.
Hey, Brenda.
Yes.
I really like that point, that tip you shared, and I'd like to tack on to that. So there are wills that are prepared by lawyers, and I'm with Brenda on this. If it's prepared by a licensed attorney, it's just going to make your job a lot easier. However, many signers now, we're in the do-it-yourself age. Mm-hmm. And so signers, homeowners, individuals, they are either creating it themselves, going online to these online sites and downloading these templates, or even going to Staples, Office Max, and buying those off-the-shelf version. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted, some of you might think, well, don't all wills come from lawyers? No, they don't. And if you buy those off the shelf, even downloading them from a Zoom Legal, usually the signer is going to have questions, and they're expecting you to answer those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, that is excellent. That just leads into what I wanted to share about wills, is make sure you don't cross that UPL line. And that's the UPL is unauthorized practice of law. You want to make sure. So when you get these handmade wills or the do-it-yourself wills, that's when you really it's really easy for you to get in trouble. People, I don't know how many emails I get from notaries Well, in Texas, aren't you supposed to have two witnesses? I'm not an attorney, so I can't tell you that. That depends on how the will was created. It might be, the person might show you a will that was created in North Carolina, or any of the 50 states. I mean, there's so many variations. So everybody, is trying to put this in this little narrow field as to how the wills are going to be done. But it all depends on who created the will, as to what format it's going to be in, as to how many witnesses you need. I mean, there's no blanket way to do it. And that's what I try to get up people to understand. And I think that's the hardest part when people say,
Uh,
well, how do we do wills?
Phyllis, Wanda had a question before we move on to the next
Okay,
tip.
Wanda, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I think you answered it, and all y'all's conversation answered it. It was kind of like a redundant, and so obviously if it's done by an attorney, that attorney's name is going to show that it's from a certain law firm. And so I would just, when Michelle said something, I was like, okay, or Brenda, how are we going to be able to tell whether it's drawn up by? But
I just asked the signer is how I, and assume that they're going to tell me the truth.
Say it again, Brenda.
I just asked the signer when in that initial call if it's been drafted by an attorney, or are you using a local attorney? I'll just slip it in there like that so that I get what I feel like is a truthful answer from them. And I'm not saying that you can't create your own will and do it perfectly well, but like Phyllis has said, people just use any old thing because it's free, and so anyway,
it's protection for us. And
yes,
thank you, it's protection for us. And I never knew about that. And then what it also sounds like what Brenda just said, a kind of similar but different way to ask him, says, and what law firm drew up your will? And okay, is that in Texas or was that in North Carolina? I mean, just
Exactly.
and people have a tendency to probably stumble at that point.
And Wanda, yes, you were right though. When a lawyer does draft the will, usually his name and address will be somewhere on that document, prepared by. Okay. So you've got what Brenda suggested, asking the question, may I ask how you drafted the will, or did an attorney assist you, or where did you purchase it? And then when you get to the appointment, there will be indicators, either a cover letter or again, prepared by. And that, I love to see that. I relax because any questions that come up, they're getting referred to that attorney who was paid big bucks, and they're willing to. They've got a contact number for that attorney. And I let them hash it out. And then I say, sometimes I'm on the phone, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Okay, I understand. And we proceed. Everyone's happier.
Very good. Thank you all.
And another good thing too, when attorneys, usually when attorneys create them and they send their clients to a notary, the attorney will include, a lot of attorneys will include instructions, which it makes it even better. You see that, just follow the instructions, and you won't go wrong. But it needs to be one that was professionally, it's easier for everybody if it's professionally prepared, and that you don't have to answer any questions about how it should be done, because you shouldn't be doing that, because again, you don't want to cross that UPL line. That is just so important.
Hey, Phyllis, I'm really glad you brought up the UPL topic, because I don't think it gets stressed enough. And if you don't mind, can I read something real quick from a book called 12 Steps to a Flawless Notarization. It's put out by the National Notary Association, and they have a chapter on unauthorized practice of law. I'm just going to read 2 quick sentences that left an impact on me. In serving the general public by notarizing documents, notaries can sometimes get into trouble by being too helpful. Even when pressured by a persistent client, they must resist the temptation to give legal advice in order to avoid unauthorized practice of law. One more sentence. Notaries are more often tempted to practice law without a license than perhaps any other public or private officer. This is because document signers often misunderstand the powers of notaries and assume they can offer advice about any document that requires notarization.
God, that is so true. I mean, this goes beyond just wills. This is for any document. I mean, we can't give advice on any document, you know. And so, I mean, I don't know how many times somebody has called me for an appointment and said, well, I'm just going to wait for you to get here before I fill it out. I said, no, that's not how it works. It needs to be completely filled out before I get there. All you need to do is sign it when I get there. I said, because I'm not going to be able to help you fill it out. You know, you have to be very, very adamant about that. Because if something goes wrong, they are going to point the finger at you. And I mean, even attorneys will ask you sometimes, and I'm saying any document about, you know, I had an attorney just last night called me for an online notarization and asked me once I notarized the document, was it going to be legal? I'm like, sir, I mean, I can't tell you if that document is going to be legal. I'm just going to notarize the signature. And he was like, and then I guess he thought about what he said. And he said, oh yeah, I understand. But you know, just be careful, you know, because we are dealing with these type of documents. Jake, do you have a tip for us?
I believe I do, and I apologize for being tardy to the party, but did you guys cover alertness of the signer during your vetting call?
No, good one, Jake.
Well, that actually kind of piggybacks what both you ladies were just mentioning, that it applies across the board. But in my experience doing general notary work with the will, you know, when you do your phone vetting of your signer to make sure, you know, the type of documents, and as Brenda had mentioned, you know, the attorney prepared, sometimes that person that is seeking our services is not actually the signer, it's a relative. And I've been on countless situations to where the person was bedside or terminally ill, or just, you know, not, they need to do the will obviously in immediate time frame. And so my tip would be always want to find out who is your signer going to be if it's not the person on the phone, and just ask them, are they understanding of the document before you get there, they know what they're going to be signing. And then if you are the situation, which you will if you do this, you know, in your portfolio of general notary work, you're going to come across them and you're going to have some type of conversation with them to determine, are they mentally alert, and I say mentally alert, are they coherent as to what they'll be signing. And so some questions I ask them is like, hey, it's a great day on Tuesday, how about that weather today? They look at me a little puzzled, like, well, what's the weather like? Oh, well, you know, it's kind of warm out there. But if they're the seasons, if they're in a different time and not aware what's going on, then that's kind of a small red flag for me. So now I keep the conversation going. So I'm interviewing the signer literally before we even start the notarization process. So that's important to make sure that they're sound mind, that they're not under the influence of anything, whether it be pain medication or the relatives that are there. You're going to have to sometimes, and I think Phyllis, maybe you have a situation you come across where you had to ask the people to leave, and to make sure that your signer was not being influenced by anyone else. So that is tip one. And tip two is to make sure that the ID, especially if you're in a nursing home or in a terminal care facility, that the signer actually will be in possession of the original credential. A lot of times they do not have it. So that would be my 2 tips for now.
Thank you, Jake. Those were excellent, excellent tips, especially, you know, trying to determine the signer's willingness and their capabilities. That's so important, because a lot of times people wait until a tragedy happens in order to get that will signed, and everybody's scrambling around trying to get that done, and they want to rush people and put pressure on people. So that's super, super important. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Michelle, do you have another tip? Your mic is not on.
Thank you for letting me know, for not going too far. Yes, the next tip I'd like to offer deals with the notary journal. For an appointment that involves a last will and testament, I make it a point to do extra journaling. One, if there are witnesses present, whether I have to notarize their signatures or not, I require them to sign my journal. So I'm going to ID them and have them sign my journal. And then in the notes section, I am going to document some of what Jake talked about, the mental capacity of the signers and any other thing that will help jog my memory a year later, 3 years later, 10 years later, to try to remember this interview. So it's whatever works for me. So again, good journaling, and make sure to ID and include the witnesses in the journal. Thank you.
Great tip, Michelle. Thank you so much. The journal is so important. I know some states don't require a journal, but in Texas, we do require a journal. So the Texas Secretary of State has some recommended things that should be put in your journal, but we need to go beyond that and use those extra spaces to make notes to ourselves so we can remember, because you never know. You can notarize something today, and 10 years down the line, or even less, that particular document can be challenged in court. And the first thing they want to do is ask for the notary who notarized that signature. Wanda, you had a question?
Yes, ma'am. So are you all saying that we can go down into the next line to make our notations and then just squiggle it down that this goes down to this point here, and for the future remembrance of us? I mean, that we may need you. Okay. So we can write a dissertation, in other words, if we have to.
You can do that in your journal.
In your journal. Okay. Thank you. I wasn't sure about
I'll often use up to 3 or 4 lines, you know, spaces, and just have, it'll just look like a big paragraph of information, because it really helps. You're going to be very glad you did.
Great. Thank you all.
Yep.
And I read a little bit about that in the notary best practices, and I needed a real person to ask that question to confirm it.
Yeah. Good question, Wanda. And thank you for sharing that, Christina. Okay, Brenda, what is your next tip? Your mic is not on.
Just grandma is still worn out from her week of taking care of grandbabies. So anyway, what I wanted to kind of tack on here, it's not exactly a new tip, but I'm just going to start with this little story and tell y'all. I've never told this story in a group and been as candid about how this happened, but okay, my grandmother got dementia, and so apparently there was enough money so that my dad and his three siblings wanted to get her half distributed immediately after her death. Now, this is just the way my family thinks. I'm sorry, but it is the truth. And so that they've passed away. They've all passed away since then. So I'm not embarrassed. I'm not worried about hurting them now. But There was my uncle who was an accountant, and he was kind of like stepping back from this plan. My aunt who was an environmental attorney, and then my dad and my aunt who were worker bees. And so anyway, my aunt sees me in Dillard's one night, back in the day, Dillard's, and said, "Hey, Brenda, we need to get Mama's will notarized." And I'm like, the last time I saw her, you know, all she would call me was a little SHIT because her dementia had gotten so bad. I'm thinking, I don't want to notarize anything my grandmother did, first of all. But secondly, you know, somebody with dementia. Well, and the other thing that I'll tell y'all candidly is that I'm a serial marriager and divorcer. So I've been married 3 times, and my second husband was with me. And you know, had I agreed to do that, I'm telling y'all, I know he would have been difficult during the, you know, if he would have heard me say I would do that, he would have brought that up later, and probably, you know, I would have really regretted it. But it was an immediate no, and I knew it was going to make my family unhappy. But they did manage to get it done somehow. Of course, there was a notary somewhere that was willing to do it. But when you do a will, you have to be, I mean, when you are asked to notarize a will, I mean, even if all your aunts and uncles are standing there saying, you need to do this, you have got to just be brave and say no. And now I was in my 30s when that happened. I'm in my 60s now, and I've hopefully grown up and matured into a hard old lady. So I wouldn't do it no matter what now, but there was a lot of pressure on me to do that. So like Jake says, you just have, you know, and I think we all agree on the panel here, you can't allow anybody to pressure you into doing a will that is wrong, because, well, I could have lost my entire career as a notary publications author and course writer. I mean, I could have lost so much if I would have done that, because so anyway, that's what I wanted to share about that. And I'm just going to pass my time and let someone else go on the panel, and then I've got another tip later to share.
Thank you, Brenda. That was a great tip. You know, hey, something as serious as a will, you know, that was great, because we have to be careful as notaries. You know, our stamp and our signature carries so much weight, so we have to be super careful. And that was great, Brenda. Jake, do you have another tip?
Yes, ma'am. Which is kind of reflecting on the conversation so far, and just, you know, this is some great conversation. I was reflecting back to a couple of times when I was an escrow officer, and people presented the will that didn't necessarily have to go through probate. And because it was not done by an attorney or properly done by at a state level, and it was an attorney in a different state, that person's wishes were not necessarily honored because there was a glitch in the actual will itself. And so what we would have to do is say, go back and ask the notary to show their journal, and then get with an attorney, and then maybe they can get, you know, piggyback this or whatever. So when you guys are talking about the journal, that just kind of invoked that memory that, you know, it's very important to have it done by an attorney if possible. But adding on to that, the journals in the States, and I'm assuming most people are here in Texas or maybe Alabama too, but if they're in a state that does not require a journal, obviously doing this type of work, it's essential you have one. And my tip number 1 would be keep your journal forever and ever and ever. Because sometimes the cases can drag on forever, like beyond what a tort period would be, and you just never know, and you don't want to be unarmed without having that as your resource in your CYA. And then my second tip, backing on that, especially here in Texas, is when you issue a receipt, I know it's popular now for people to get paid by Venmo and these popular apps, but you're still required to issue a receipt for your services, and it must be itemized. And I would further add on, always make sure you get a duplicate and add that with either your journal or with your book, because that's also required too. And you'll need that to evidence in case you're ever attacked for overcharging. And that would be my tips for now.
Great tips, Jake. Great tips. That's excellent. You, especially about that receipt. And some of us, we have a book club in the patron community. We're doing Professor Clausen's book, Notary Best Practices, and we are on his journal chapter, and he recommends that, which I hadn't been doing, he recommends that you put what you charge in your journal also. Yeah, the book Brenda just showed. And I think that's a excellent, it's just another CYA, and to me, that's what that journal is. It's a record, but it's also a way to CYA. And I am going to do my tip right quick, which is a big one for me, and that is for Texas notaries, I would encourage you not to do those wills online. And the reason why I say that is because I had a very long conversation with one of the staff attorneys at the Texas Secretary of State's office about doing wills online. And he told me that because nobody can determine how the witnesses are supposed to be exactly positioned, if they need to be in the same space as the signer or if they can be in different spaces. And he said because of that, he would recommend that we don't do wills online. Now, there's nowhere, you're not going to find it written anywhere, but the thing is, when we do something, is how is it going to be challenged? If it's going to be challenged, and what's going to happen? And online notarizations are new, so we don't know. So you just have to be careful. Just because Notarized or whatever other platform says you can do it online, Notarize, those other platforms, they are not your Secretary of State. They do not create the laws that govern notaries. Keep that in mind, please. I mean, I've seen all of these presentations and I just cringe when they're telling people what they can do. You go by what your state says you can do. Okay? So somebody sent me a thing said Notarize does not allow you to notarize wills online. Okay, good. But other platforms do. And if you have an independent platform, you can notarize whatever you want online. So I'm saying that if you're in Texas, be careful. Know what you can and can't do, especially when it comes to wills. Michelle, I saw you had your mic on.
You saw Dreamland's question. I was going to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Wanda.
I'm sorry to ask so many questions, but I just have to know. Regarding the receipt, when you're doing loan signings, you indicate the total amount that the title company is paying you or whomever. I mean, I'm just in your journal when you're doing a loan signing and you have clients. So the client that I'm having that signed the documents, they're not my client. So do I put that amount that the title company is paying me in the receipt section?
I don't, Wanda.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason I don't is because when we're paid now, it's not wrong if you decide you want to do it. I'm not saying that, but our books in Texas are public record. Are you in Texas, Wanda?
Yeah, I'm in Houston. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so our books are public information, first of all. So I don't think that when I'm hired by a company, I'm paid to be a signing agent. I'm not being paid to be a notary public, is the way I see it. Now, when I am hired by an individual, you bet it goes in the book.
Right.
But I usually write something to refer to who hired me in my journal. So that way I can say, oh yeah, I can go back and look at this payment. And if I were to get asked about it, but I don't feel like anything that's public records needs to carry out something I'm doing that's not strict notary work. That's just my way of seeing it. And, you know, the other thing is, if you wanted to, you don't have to keep those numbers in your journal, but you do have to keep a book of your charges for notary work. But we've just, over the years, started putting it in our journal because that's an easy way to do it. So you could have a separate book, which would be a receipt, but still, I think it would be subject to being pulled by the, you know, into a public record kind of thing. So I still wouldn't put it in there. I just keep it in my books, in my law. I keep it in my accounting, is what I'm trying to say.
Right, and that's what I've done. And I have not put, though, I just needed to know because I didn't know whether I should or shouldn't, but individuals, yes, I do, you know, and I just didn't want to cross the line. And so what, in other words, would I keep my receipts for the title companies somewhere near my journal, or as you said, just in my monthly, weekly accounting? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate it.
That's how I do it.
Okay, any other questions?
Can I add on that?
Yes, Jake, of course.
And it's just, I do it a little differently. Anything that's in a journal for me is something that what would Secretary of State approve? So I only do my statutory fees in there, and then everything else goes into a separate book. But either way, there's no wrong way of doing it. But if you charge, let's say, $100 to notarize a will that's, you know, a county over or whatever case may be, obviously you're charging ancillary fees, not just the statutory $6 fee. So if you were to put 100 in your journal, in my opinion, could put you on radar because, as Brenda mentioned, it is public inspection or available for public inspection. And then the attorney would be like, why'd you charge $100? Of course, you could evidence and say, well, here's the receipt I issued. But for me personally, for signing agent work, I put a big fat 0 because the client obviously is the hiring party and not the actual signer or the consumer. But if I'm doing general notary work and I notarize one document, then I put the $6 or $7 or whatever it is. Just a different way of doing it.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate that. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Let's do one more round of tips. Michelle, you have one last tip?
I do. It would be foolish of me not to bring up notary liability. For those who don't know, I am a licensed insurance agent in Texas, Alabama, and a few other states. I sell notary bonds and E&O insurance. Of every document that we're asked to notarize a signature on is important, but again, as we stated, this will is something special, and it is one of the most common notarizations or documents that end up being challenged or discussed in court. And so I want to encourage you. You all know your bond. In Texas, it's a $10,000 bond. In Alabama, it's a $25,000 bond. That's mandatory. That errors and omission insurance is optional. But I want to encourage you, especially if you're doing mobile notary work, general notary work, protect yourself with the sufficient amount of errors and omission insurance, so that when someone thought they were going to inherit daddy's car, daddy's boat, the house, and they don't, they are going to find a lawyer that will represent them, and you are going to be that witness. And it's one thing to be a witness, it's another thing for someone to say, Daddy had no idea what he was signing, the notary should not have notarized it. When that happens, that's when your errors and omission insurance is going to appoint a lawyer on your behalf to deal with that. You get to sit back and talk to your lawyer. He'll say, Michelle, produce a copy of your journal. Michelle, tell me what happened at that appointment. And many times it'll be settled out of court without requiring you to go to court. So you want that support. Purchase errors and omission insurance, because that bond will not go to bat for you the way you may be thinking it will. Thank you. If you have more questions about that, while the others speak, you can type it in chat.
Hey, Michelle, do you feel comfortable telling them about what Michael Closen told us about the bond when we were at the NNA? Yeah.
Okay. So Michael Closen, who is a lawyer, trained lawyer, specializes in notary law. He's that witness expert. So when these cases go to trial, nationally, they usually call on him to explain notary law. He found that surety companies, whether it's merchants bonding, those of you who got it through the NNA, or through CNA surety, if you went through the AAN, or myself, those bond companies don't like a lot of litigation. So as soon as someone files a claim against your bond, the surety company, they're going to review it, but they want to hurry up and pay it out before giving you time to defend yourself and say, no, that's not the truth. So again, it's really good for you to have that E&O, and that E&O company, that insurance company, is really gonna say, nah, that's not what went down, and we're gonna fight it.
Thank you, Michelle. That's some good information. And I want to encourage you, if you're, everybody should, if you're a notary doing this, you need to have E&O insurance. And I've been purchasing my E&O insurance from Michelle for years. I always tell people it's just good to be able to talk to your insurance person and know who they are. And, you know, Michelle keeps me on track with mine. So thank you, Michelle. Brenda, you have another tip?
Yes, I do. And that is, when you get the call, find out if they intend, before you quote a fee to them, find out if they intend to have other documents signed at the same time. I think we've already covered witnesses, and that, you know, you may need witnesses there, but do you, like generally they want, whenever I go to a will appointment, there's going to be the will. That's what they'll tell you about, but then they'll flip over the will and there's going to be a power of attorney and then something else, the medical consent. And so I am not good at remembering. I know a power of attorney must be obviously notarized, but the medical consent, I think that just requires 2 witnesses, if I remember correctly. And I have seen medical consents where you just could do a notary, use a notary to witness your signature. But I recommend that you find out exactly what all documents, because that surely affects my what I'm going to quote them. And the other thing is, we brought up witnesses. I read recently where, and I don't know what y'all think about this panel, but I read recently where a notary who does a lot of wills has their own witness, and all witnesses, and insist on taking the witnesses so they don't have to ID them again. Now, I thought that was an interesting way to look at it, but I don't know if I would impose that on the signers or not. So anyway, that's it. Yes, and Jake is just he sends all his insurance needs to Michelle, and I think that's great, Jake.
Yeah. Thank you, Brenda.
Yeah.
Jake, you have one last tip?
Yeah, and that's how do I need to unmicrophone myself? I keep muting myself. Actually, I don't. I've been learning a lot from you guys, so this is great. But I am tipped out. I think this is all the good core stuff.
Yeah, we did discuss a lot of good stuff. Does our audience have any questions, any additional questions about wills?
Well,
N-
I had a question. Think Jake kind of touched on it. This is Nicolette. So, Jake, you have a separate journal that you use for loan signing versus general notary work?
I do not. So my journal would either show a 0 or the statutory fees, and the statutory fees would come into play when the actual signer is the one that's paying me. And then we are required to have some type of receipt book. And so I just do mine through QuickBooks, which you can do in Excel. You don't have to do anything fancy. But in Texas, you're also required to sign your receipt that you issue to your signer. But signing agent work is completely different. That I don't necessarily itemize. I mean, I do for tax purposes, but not for record keeping purposes as far as the public. So no, I just have my regular journal and then just QuickBooks is what I use.
Okay, and I didn't realize that the notary that we had to sign our receipts, because I sent some like the square receipts, and they're not signed by me.
And if you were to do it like through Venmo, and I bring that up because that's just the world we're in, that and the Cash App and PayPal, so long as you send something that can be by email electronic, so long as, and again, I'm not an attorney by any means, but if you, and Brenda, she knows the terminology, she's the legal part of this, but if you do like the slash, the S and the slash, and then just type your name, Texas recognizes that as your true and legal signature. So you don't actually have to like print it out, sign it, then scan it, and then do that. And Brenda, jump in and help me with that verbiage, or any of you ladies, because I don't know what that's called, but it actually, it's kind of a hidden little law. It's a part of the government code, but it's not with Chapter 406. It's actually a different wing, but it is on the FAQ section of the Secretary of State site.
I've never seen it cited before, so I don't know, but I know it's you're talking about slash S slash and then typing out your name.
Right, right.
Okay, I just know that it's by custom. It has been like you'll see clerks and in their official records that they'll put an S and then put the name or the like the name whoever signed next to it. I think it's called a confirmed or a conformed signature. So, but I think it probably would be fine to use that. I've never seen it cited, so I'm not sure, but Jake has known this for some time. He just thinks I told it to him, but I didn't.
I did some research on it, and I know like in the court system, and I just Googled it really quick, and the Supreme Court recognizes that. But again, that's a whole different animal. But somewhere in the business code or something, it said anything that's required by an officer of the state, which kind of bundled notaries, public, that could be an alternate way of signing something to where you're compliant.
All right. Great tips, guys. I mean, I want to thank you so much. Any other questions? Ramika, I saw your microphone on. You have a
Yes,
question?
I was gonna ask the question about the I'm sorry. The receipts that we send to the customers, if electronic receipts. Should we go back and sign them for the customers that we've already sent the receipts to, or just from this point, since we know now, start signing those receipts?
If it was me, I'm not going to go back and sign mine. And I'm thinking about all of those that we do online. Anyway, when we do our online notarization, they get
Right.
from that. So I'm not going to go back and sign mine.
Oh,
But
and it had me.
but the
It
ones
also
I
had.
give, yeah, the ones I do in person, you know, I provide them a written receipt, you know, with my
Okay.
signature. But the ones I do online, God, I would have
I
thousands
know.
of sheets I would have to go back and sign. So no,
Well, do you add like a journal page number? Well, we're doing it online, so it's already on that. Okay. All
in the
right.
electronic journal.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And-
I'm sorry.
Alyssa or Lisa, did that answer your question about digital signature?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great.
I was just going to say, I put a little note in the chat that if I'm not promoting Legal Shield, I'm just saying that I actually used my Legal Shield membership and I don't have it right now, but I did use it for having them draft a will. And I knew from my previous jobs that it was a good will. And I was thrilled that I got one. So anyway, the other thing is you know, no matter what state you're in, I think that you should look into it because you'll also get instructions from the attorney who prepared it, and you'll be able to sort of read how they would tell you to do a will. And so, or to notarize a will, because you'll be taking it to another notary. And so you'll have that information. Anyway, that's just a little tip that, you know, I just found to be amazing because wills are not cheap, but you know, for your $25 a month Legal Shield amount, you can get a new will. So anyway, that's it.
Yeah, I did the same thing, Brenda. Many years ago, I used to be with Legal Shield, and everybody that I had signed up, I said, if you do nothing else, make sure you get your free will, and it does your medical power of attorney and everything. I'm not with Legal Shield anymore, but I encourage it. And if you get your will and things and you decide you don't need the membership, cancel the membership, but your will is still done.
Exactly.
And if you
Exactly.
guys need it, I am still with Legal Shield. So let me know and I can help you. Okay, because that's how I got mine too. Anyway, any other? Christina, I see you have your microphone on. You have something you want to say?
That was an accident.
Huh?
That was an accident. I apologize.
Okay. Okay. Guys, we shared some great information today. I want to thank our guests, Brenda and Jake, for joining us. We really appreciate you. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us this morning on Notary Gals. Michelle, any last words?
No, well, yeah, you know, I always have something to add. Thank you, Phyllis. Don't be intimidated by the will. I hope this discussion didn't scare any of you off. Now, I do know some notaries in Alabama who choose not to notarize wills because of everything we spoke about. But they can be, there are going to be multiple signatures, multiple notary fees, plus your travel fee. It can be a nice payday for you. So spend a little time, come up with your own guidelines, outline how you're going to handle it. And the signer, their family will be very appreciative for you providing this service to them.
Thank you, Michelle. Brenda, you have any last parting words for us?
I'm just very appreciative of being asked to join y'all, but I think we've covered everything that I could possibly share about wills today.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank
Jake,
y'all.
you got any last comments?
Thank you as well for having me. And as always, I learned something too. And always participate in these because it's always something new to learn. So education is key to keeping you off the panel and keeping you from not acting on your E&O.
Thank you, Jake. And while I got everybody here, I just want to remind you that on Sundays, Michelle, Brenda, and Jake, and myself, we do we have the Notary Lounge on Clubhouse. We do it every Sunday at 3 o'clock. So if you are want some more of training, just like this, because we did this same training on Clubhouse a couple of Sundays ago. So if you're interested in learning more about growing your business, about notary best practices, please feel free to join us every Sunday at 3 o'clock on Clubhouse in the Notary Lounge. Anybody else have anything coming up that they want to share? If not, I want to thank you guys again. Oh, Brenda, I saw you turn on your mic. Nothing.
It's fine, no problem.
Okay. Okay. If not, you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And thank you again for joining us. God bless.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again.